Hi guys, today we are here with Alessandro Sicioldr. Alessandro is an Italian artist who fills its canvases with surrealist images, drawing from symbolism, the subconscious, and the human psyche. Alessandro has recently come back from Bangkok, where he took part to the Iconostasis exhibition, and his works have recently been exhibited in Seoul, South Korea too. Thank you, Alessandro, for the time with me. I really appreciate it. I'm really curious to learn everything about you. So I would love to start from the very beginning. So how did you start to do art? I know that you worked with your father on the artistic side a little bit. Tell me everything.
Yes, of course. Now, I started, I think that there are two different paths in my life. The first one is the natural propension for a child to draw and to express himself through images. And then at a certain stage in my life, I decided to pursue this as an artistic career. And so I had to just change approach and be more, I don't want to say more serious, but more systematic. And this is how it went. And I was studying in a different field, and I started to draw in my spare time until 2013, when I started to work in oil. And working in oil was a big change in my life, because I finally had a medium that allowed me to explore with my own. It was more suited to my style.
And you only discovered it at that age?
Yes.
You have never tried it before your teenage
Never
years?
painted before, never took a brush in my hand before, just drawing all the time. And I think it's a good way to go, because drawing forces you to think differently than painting. With painting, you have many things going on. With drawing, you just have simple materials and like a pen and some paper, and your imagination does all the rest. While if you have too many linguistic, I think it's a language. So if you have too many options, you can get confused by two informations. So
Yeah.
just drawing is like writing. You just have a piece of paper and you just work with your fantasy. And I could do that without a studio. In my spare time, when I was at school, on side notes, the post-its, or any kind of scraps of paper. And when I decided to become more systematic, I almost immediately discovered painting. And painting for me at first was a problem, because I wanted to avoid doing things that were too kitschy, in a sense. I was scared of being kitschy. And the only way, for me, my opinion, to do that is by going to the old masters and speak with them, because they are going to guide you all the time, because we have tradition, which is a giant database of experiences. So you go there and you take from that database, because people have faced problems that are similar to yours, and they have found solutions back there. So I'm not an admirer of tradition. It's just the result of many mistakes made in the past, and experiences and endeavors. So that's what happened.
Who were the old masters you chose to go to?
Of course, my father created a sort of taste in me for certain particular atmospheres of the Renaissance. But I'm not talking about Raphael or Titian. It's more like early Renaissance, like the primitives, like Flemish primitives and Italian primitives. They are called like that because they lived on a threshold between the kind of Byzantine style, where things were more idealized and they had certain rules, and they merged with Greek antiquity. And that moment was a moment of discovery, where there were no rules, there were no academic kind of way of thinking. It was a moment of history where everything was possible, and they were just inventing stuff. They were mixing up, and so you find so many weird things going on, weird colors and shapes. And I think that period is interesting for that reason, because it was a liminal kind of situation. And Yes, I like Piero della Francesca, for example. They started to experiment with perspective. They wanted to understand the rules of perspective, how to position figures in space, and it's so elegant and beautiful, and everything is so calibrated. And I really like that period. And Flemish, of course, Flemish painting from the 15th century. So that's for me, it's just as good as Italian Renaissance, because like thinking about Jan van Eyck, what he did is so incredible at the time. So that's my main inspiration.
And when you say you started going to the old masters, you mean you started copying old masters doing master copy, or more like drawing inspiration from images or something like that?
I remember going to Perugia, to the Galleria Nazionale dell'Umbria, which was full of medieval painting, so beautiful. And I remember spending days there because there were some artists like Dino Valls, the Spanish painter, and he was so inspired by Middle Age painting, and I wanted to see the real thing, and I wanted to compare it with the real thing. And so I started to look at old master from that perspective, like a contemporary painter looking at old paintings, not as something to be studied, like to be contextualized, like a historian, but it was just material from which to take inspiration. And now that I've done this for so many years, it's natural for me. But at the time, it was revolutionary because I was thinking about other kind of artists, more contemporary, like Mébius, Jean Giraud, the comic artists. And I realized that you can just merge together something from the past and make it live today. And that was basically my story. And yes, I started to copy as well, but I don't think that copy is necessary. It's just getting along with those masters, just looking at them, leaving them, watching them, making them inspire you is different than just copying, because I didn't want that style. I wanted that it's no words for that. No,
Something yours, probably.
the mood. Now they say the aesthetics, and it's not just superficial. It's deeper than that. I wanted to breathe them, to inhale the old masters.
I love this expression. But you never studied formally art, right? You never did art school or any academy.
No. I learned by doing my paintings, so my technique followed along. But the problem is, of course, at first I didn't have any technique.
Yeah.
So my first paintings were problematic. But I don't care, because I look at them from the perspective of what I wanted to say back then. But of course, I had to teach myself many things. I have to do a lot of copies and study from nature. But it's not so hard to do that. You just know how to do that. And plus, we have many resources from the internet, like high resolution paintings that you can study. So I don't think it's strictly necessary to have formal training. But of course, it saves you some years.
For sure. And also, your father kind of painted. He also taught you technique, or would you say it was more of an inspiration for you to look at, but then you learned on your own?
Kind of both, because my father never gave me formal lessons, like this is how we do this is how we do that, because that's not our approach. It was more like it's still working today, because he comes here sometimes, he gives me critiques about my paintings, and that's how you get better, by critiques. And if you link your ego too much to the painting, if you attach too much to that idea, you cannot receive any criticism. If you cannot receive criticism, you cannot grow. So the base of learning how to paint is not to have lessons, because there is nothing to learn. It's just your eye need to, and your hand need to adjust. What you need is critique, something that tells you what are the problems. So it's not about giving lesson. Lesson number one, this is just, for example, many academies works because you put a bunch of painters inside a room, and those painters are working together, and they are commenting each other, and that's the academy. It's not the professor that is coming from above and telling you. Well, a professor should be a person that is really good at pointing mistakes and problems, and understanding that in contemporary art there is not a single language. There are many languages, but you have to understand the logic of that language. It's like a game. You have your own rules. Once you have set the rules, you have to be good to understand when you are not respecting them. So some paintings do not work. We don't know why, because by the logic of that same painting, it's not working. But it's not something written in stone. It just depends on the kind of work. If you're doing abstract, a painting may be unbalanced, and nobody knows why.
Yeah.
We just feel it instinctively. You know, it's that gut feeling. For me, a good professor is a professor that knows understands what the artist is trying to say and helps them, guides him. So I think that's the reason why many workshops have many painters inside working together, and that's a strength, because after a while, when you work on a painting, you just don't see anything anymore. You're used to it, so you need an outer perspective to help you go back in track. That's for me, and that's what my father did, still do today.
That's amazing. And would you say that besides your father, has there been any other figures, people, artists that really shape your vision, your artistic journey in some way?
I have some friends and then we live a little far away, but we talk daily and we critique and daily about, Angelo, Enrico, and we are always getting along and trying to help each other in this path. But it's useful, and once you lose that, you start to become close in your own world, and you can go on with a single mistake and spoil yourself and say, oh, it's fine. Then maybe you don't know anything anymore. You just cannot see your mistakes anymore. But if you have an outer perspective that tells you, wait, stop, you're doing a stupid thing. Of course, there is a risk on leaning too much on other people's opinions. So it's just a balance. But you cannot be isolated, but you cannot be totally dependent of the opinion of other painters. So it's really hard to do that, actually.
No, absolutely. And I was wondering, actually, coming here to see where you live, and you took us a little bit around your town. But I was wondering if you have any artistic community here and how you maintain the balance that you were talking about right now between having a community and influence each other and having lonely time.
Yeah, no, it's sadly I have no active artistic community here, but we usually talk via internet. So because we live far away, every artist chooses to live. Often, many artists that I know chooses to live in a small town because they can afford the bigger studio and some like relaxing time without the many problems of living in a city. So many artists are choosing to live outside of big centers. And yes, but there is the problem. The problem that once artists used to hang out together in those kind of bars, circles. They just writers, poets, artists, and I kind of miss that, because the environment is really good for creativity. But I guess we cannot have everything. Now we have so many options, but there is a little town here in the Tuscia. I don't remember how it's called, but it was a kind of an abandoned place, and nobody was living there anymore. Calcata, which is called like the Borgo degli Artisti, like the city, the town of artists. And like many artists created their studio there. They bought like those places together, and they started living there. And they created a sort of an artist village, and that's so beautiful. And even in Antico di Corrado, I think they did something like that.
Well, which period are you talking about? Is it recent?
Like Antico di Corrado, maybe more in the 19th century, and Calcutta, that there are still artists living there, and it's just artists around. So those kind of ghost town they have a second life with this artist. So that would be like the dream idea, to have a place like that. But maybe I'm asking too much. There are some artists in Tuscany too, and I know them. I'm friend with some of them. But yes, it's not a real community.
I see. Okay, and going back to your artistic journey, as you said before, when was the time when you said, okay, then I'm gonna live here in Tuscany and I'm gonna be a full-time painter? Because I know that you studied something different.
Yes.
I don't know if you pursued a different type of career. How did it work? When was the time when you knew you wanted to be a full-time artist?
I just, it came naturally, and I never worked. I never had a second job. I was studying at the University of Computer Science in Perugia. Then when I got my degree, I was already working as an artist. So I was doing like a kind of double life. And then I just got my degree and started to work as an artist. But it was quite natural. It was a kind of, I never did something like, now I'm going to do the artist I don't know how to do in the future. I was preparing myself for a kind of corporate life, maybe, because I didn't know that it was possible to live as an artist. This is how, I just didn't know. Then with some experience that I had, I realized that I could do that. So I started to be more professional, and I started to work a little bit, and then it just came naturally. So it was scary at first, but this is how life goes. Sometimes things just happen, and you just go with the flow and start accepting what happens.
Can you tell me more about this? Because I think there are many people who are kind of in your same situation at that time, no? So maybe they want to be full-time artists, they're preparing themselves, but maybe they don't know what to do. But what was your case? Do you remember the first painting you sold, or how you entered the system of art?
No, it's hard because it's I don't know why, but people started to buy my paintings, and that's how it went. That's what I know. But I realized that.
But was it more from the social media because you posted something there, or how did they get to know you?
Yeah, at the time I did a really. I don't know. I had like a gallery, my first gallery, that discovered me through social media, because I was doing a lot of work on social media, because at the time it was possible to do that, because
How many years ago are we talking about?
13, 14 years ago. It was totally different. Facebook was big back then, and many people saw my paintings, and they started to circulate online. I have stuff from 2008 still online, and that's the problem with the internet, I guess, that you cannot cancel things from the past. So I've left a really big trace during the years on the internet.
And that you regret?
No. But of course it's strange sometimes that people come up with like a video from 17 years ago, things like that. But it's not a problem, because it's a sincere and authentic path, so I don't have anything to hide. But I started from really bad kind of drawings, and I improved with time. But the vision was always there. My vision was always there. I just needed more technique and more expressive capabilities. So I started to post online and to use internet as a way to connect with people, because I was in a kind of a desperate place at the time, because I didn't want to go into a corporate job. So I was saying to myself, I need to find something. And then I think it was, I think it was given to me, because it's not something that I earned. It started to happen, and it's still happening sometimes, and I hope it will continue to happen. But it's not something that you can decide if people are going to like your works, especially when you are a beginner, because it's not that you are not an asset. You're just someone that gets bought both because they like it. So that's difficult, but I don't have any suggestion, because I think it happened just naturally.
Okay, thank you. That's very interesting. And I want to talk a little bit about your painting because obviously they're not painting that are realist in the sense that they reflect the real world, but you kind of represent a parallel world, a surrealist world full of symbols and so on. And I wanted to understand if they represent a kind of spirituality that you have. Are you spiritual in any type of way?
It's the number one question. This is because I am at search and in a continuous struggle with that, because I have many different personalities that are fighting together, and I think it's really it's a huge question. Because I like to say that my paintings are religious paintings, but not in a direct, explicit way. I'm not trying to evangelize the world with a kind of idea. It's just that they come from a place where I think spirituality and religion comes from. And that place is attention. And if I have to pick a philosopher that reflects my kind of spirituality, is Simone Weil, the philosopher from the 20th century. And she put a lot of importance on the concept of attention, which is something that today is like the number one asset, because they realize that only human attention is a big value in itself, because like advertising and the addiction from social media is trying to take that gold which we produce, and all kind of spiritualities are linked to that, like from Buddhism to Christianity. That sin, she says that sin is a problem of attention. Her concept of attention is really complex, but I think when you pay attention, you start to see things without your ego on the way. So you can love others, you can be pure because you just see what you have in front of you. And for me, that's where you start to see even what's happening inside of you. The images that you have inside are coming from that place. When you start to pay attention, it's not about inventing. She makes this distinction between imagination, which is negative, and attention, which is positive. And that's complex. Maybe I don't understand it really, really well, but I think I can get it from a certain perspective, because if you are, some images that are coming out of yourself are like the true thing that's happening inside of you. It's like the true dream that you have, and you have to observe that dream. It's like active imagination. You just go there and you see what's the real image that you have inside of you in that moment. And that's going to make a good painting as well, because that the painting is sincere. It's like the true thing. If you create with your fantasy, like superficial fantasy, you start to combine elements together, you can see that it's not true. So that kind of truth comes from attention. And even the presence of the other, which is the other person, is possible only if you forget about yourself and you start to listen to what that person is telling you. For example, you have to make emptiness of you. And if you make emptiness when painting, images are starting to come. And this is, I don't know why this is happening. So I think that's, in a way, a kind of spiritual thing. But it's hard for me to to put it into words, because it's more about feelings. But I think when we dream, we kind of let go, and when we let go, we have this flow of images that are coming to us. Some of those images are really powerful. We don't know why. So our natural state, when we just let it go, is just producing images. So that's like the true imagination. And I think I try to go there. That's my spirituality, but it's more complicated than that. It's really an ongoing process in my life to find myself spiritually. But I think it's that kind of thing, So
I'm super interested about this topic. I think it's very inspiring the way you're talking about this. And I want to better understand, like in practice, how do you make this work? Like, do you catch yourself 1 hour when you pay attention? What do you mean by paying attention? How does it actually translate in practice?
It's really hard, because this is like truly, I have many problems about this. I have many, because I feel that there is an ongoing flow inside of me. Sometimes it just come out randomly during the day, and I just need to listen to the voice
about that.
Yeah, because you are doing something else, and you just have a little idea, that a little spark, and you can pay attention to that idea.
And what does it mean for you paying attention? Sketching it down in the moment when it comes, writing it down, or just remembering for the next time you're going to paint?
It means that you give importance to that idea. It means that you take that idea seriously. Like, for example, it appears like a thought on the back of your mind. You have that kind of little voice, and usually we just let them go. But if you say, wait, stop, what are you trying to say? Repeat. And you just sketch it down maybe, and then it creates a like 2 meters painting, which you work on for 2 months. But that was just a little voice inside of you, a little word, maybe a poetry, a poem. You read a poem, you have a little image coming, and usually we are used, because this society is designed to make us ignore these parts, because they are like not, you know, if you say imagination, looks like fantasy, like things for kids, you know. But actually they are important, because from that little voice that means nothing, you are receiving a big idea, but it comes through a little voice. And even in religious, like in the Bible, there is this scene where Elijah receives the voice from God, not from like a storm or, you know, a strong wind. It's just a little voice that he. And when I read that part, I was like, oh my God, that's how it works. It's just always like the divine comes through a little voice that is almost unheard. So the Han, the Korean philosopher Byung-Chul Han, I don't know how to say that. I tried many times, but I just gave up. He speaks about God in this term. He said it's not that God is dead, it's that our way of perceiving silence and emptiness is so dead right now. It's so over that we are not able to hear the voices anymore, because those voices is not always crazy voices that are telling you to do weird things. It's just sometimes it's just an idea. It's just something, and we don't pay attention to that. So that's so in practice, what does it mean? You have a little idea, or maybe you stand in front of a painting and you have a little voice that says change that character and change completely the painting and make it completely different. And you're like, no, I worked on it for 1 month. I'm not going to ruin all that work to this little idea. But there you have to be courageous and say, okay, no, I'm going to do that because this is what is asking me. So you have to drop your attachment to the old image and you have to go. And that's so painful sometimes, because you have spent so many energy working on the image, but you feel that it's not working, it's not right. And then you have this little voice that tells like, turn the paintings upside down and do another. No, it's not possible. I'm going to keep it like this. And if you don't do that, you are going to regret it. So it's just with time you learn to interact with this voice. For me, it's a problem because I'm really distracted and I'm a disaster. So I try to do that, but I wish I could be better at this.
How do you know if that voice is giving you a correct advice? How do you know when you listen to that voice or when to ignore it?
This is the classic theological question. It is from God or it is from Satan? But it's something like, because it carries a sort of energy that excites you, that gives you life. And you feel that kind of action, even in action of your real life, you see sometimes that you have to do something, even if people around you are telling, no, don't do that, but you feel that is the right choice to do. And that's something that it's a typical human experience. I think if you want to, from a psychological perspective, there are many explanations for this. There's like the true self that you have inside of you that is speaking, that is telling you how to become your real version of yourself, because you have this voice. For example, listening to dreams. When you start to listen to dreams, you are aligning yourself with what Carl Jung was calling the self, the real, the true self, which is he identified with God, with the divine, So when you make your unconscious conscious, he said that, I don't know if that's scientifically possible to determine that, but it's a real experience of life. You see that sometimes you have to do a choice. That choice may not be the most intelligent choice, but then you look back and you said, oh, if I didn't make that choice back then, I would have betrayed myself. So be true to that kind of voice, which is not yourself, by the way, not your rational idea that you have yourself. It's just a deeper voice. And every painting should come from that place. Even if you are representing something else, even if you are doing a portrait, you feel that some things are right, some things are not right, and you just abandon yourself to that. And it worked for me. In my opinion, it has worked in the past, maybe also in the future. But that's how my creative process is. It's about this kind of feelings. It's not, and I'm going to put this symbol because this represents this or that. That's just a didascalic for me. It doesn't have any meaning.
Yeah, it's not about being too rational, but being more in the flow, being more instinctive.
Yeah.
And I really love this concept. And I think it's not something very easy to do for everyone. As you said, we live in a society that bombards us with things to do with, we have a very small attention span, right? So being there and listening to our voice sometimes is very difficult. And I wonder if you have a particular routine that you do to be able to be more in contact with your voice, or how did you learn to do this? Which advice would you give to other people to be able to be more in contact with that voice, if you have any?
I am the worst person ever at this because I wish to have something like that, but in the real world, in reality, it's really hard to have that because
would you say you always had that conversation with your inner self?
No.
It just started at some point.
No, you mean from childhood?
Yeah, like
no, during the childhood was stronger.
Yeah,
it was stronger. It was much stronger. I was completely in contact. When I played with toys, I was doing that already. I was following the emotions and the voices from inside. And so I played for hours. I created stories, the drawings. With time, I kind of lost it during the years. So I'm so worried about that. It's now I'm the worst person ever. I spend entire months without connecting with myself. And if I read my diary, I always keep diaries and journals. And it's a long struggle. Even years ago, I was telling this, it's like I have a 1% output of what I feel inside because I am so distracted by everything. So I am fighting with this. It's not that I am totally connected, because if I was connected with my inner world, I would produce a lot better paintings, a lot more images. But what I do now is just 1% of what I feel. Of course, it's, you have to live a certain kind of life to be in contact. And people are taking themselves very seriously. Like artists are taking themselves very seriously. I just envy their ability to be so connected. And because in a sense, you have to have faith in what you do.
Yeah.
And to be a person of faith means that you have to be a little like a kid, in a sense. You have to simplify your life. You have to be less worried about the world. But it's like our society is designed to, it's not just the society, it's even about your personality. It's really hard to simplify yourself and get in contact with your inner world. But I try to do that. I try to create a routine. I try to walk every morning. I try to create some moments where I leave my phone away and try to be with myself. But it's, like monks or like Buddhist monks, they isolate from everything and they just sit, in meditation, and they have entire lifestyles that are designed for that. Yep. But you cannot have that and live in the world at the same time, of course. So it's just a little bit, just a little speck of what I feel. And maybe in the future, my hope is that in the future I would be able to be more deliberate in this kind of thing. But it's just, for now it's sufficient to create a lot of paintings. But maybe in the future I will be more able to be more introspective.
And I want to pick up something that you said. You said that you journal often. How?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
In my good periods.
And I'm really curious about that because I also journal and I know that every person does it differently. Do you have a criteria for journaling? Is it just a flow of thoughts or is it more about artistic ideas? How do you treat that aspect?
Many different journals. I have the artistic journey, which is like sketchbooks and any kind of note about anything. And philosophy, I write a lot of philosophy, even if nobody is meant to read that because it's amateurish. And I have my personal journey, which is a kind of a spiritual inner journal. I also write things about my life. So at first it was just inner states and flow of consciousness. And with time, I realized that it's important to write what happens in my life. Actually, what are the experiences of my life? Because they are interconnected. They are not separate. Yeah. Because at first it was like, there is the everyday life, and then there is this kind of inner journey. But actually, they are really, if you learn to read even the paintings that I've made during the years, if you read them and you superimpose them with my life, you realize that there is a kind of language. They were talking about my life, and I can see that from the distance. Maybe from 10 years, I look at the paintings back then, and I realized what I was trying to say to myself back then. So I think I believe that the most important thing about an artist is the journey. It's not the work in itself, but it's the evolution over time. So you can read my body of work together as if it was a continuous story. And so that's my journal. It helps this kind of path. So I go back maybe 2010. What was I thinking then? So I realized that there is a kind of a seasonal. Sometimes, like in May, I start to have this kind of idea. Or during the winter, I tend to be more depressed, so I tend to do like drawings. I always do the same thing, but I don't realize that it's just natural. So it's important. Journaling is important to realize that.
I actually had a question related to this because by going to your last exhibition in Milan, I noticed that in your paintings there are some recurrent symbols, which can be the castle, the annunciation or revelations, let's say. And would you say these symbols have evolved through time or evolved through season as well, as you are saying? And which season you are going through right now? How would you describe this period?
No. If you take the whole path of my life, at first my figures look like bacteria. It looks like an evolution. At first they were like bacteria. They started to develop noses, eyes, and they became people with faces suspended in void or things like that. Then they started to develop hands, bodies, and then they started to dress them up. But you can look at that if you look the whole path. And in the last exhibition, there are some new elements, like for example, the little castle, the miniature, or distorted houses. That I took the idea from Parco dei Mostri, which is really famous. And there is this kind of skew building. This reminded me of some representation of the fall of Babylon, which in the Middle Age, they didn't represent it like ruins or walls falling down. It was just buildings, but they were like not right, So I liked that kind of imagery, and it was so strong in me. And I connected with the inner castle, which is a theme that Teresa d'Avila was talking about, the Saint Teresa. It was talking about the inner journey as a journey through a castle with many rooms. And I like the idea of getting into this house because in dreams, when you think about dreams, the castle, the house, the building is a really recurring theme. You have your house, but you discover a new room that was not there before. So the inner journey is a journey inside your inner house, your inner castle. And that's, for me, it's incredible. It's not something deliberate. It's just that following naturally my images, I come to the conclusion that I like buildings. I like to see simple buildings, not decorated, or it's just a symbol, like water, for example, trees, and clothing. Even clothing for me have a kind of abstract quality to them. I like hats because they allow me to play with shapes, and in a painting it's really important to have like shapes. So there are many things going on, but it's always kind of an emotional response to the painting.
What you're talking about, it all comes from your imagination, these visions you're talking about, right? So do you 100% draw and paint from imagination, or do you have some references intermingled with some real world things?
No, I wish I could work from imagination, and I did that at first, but I was really bad because I wasn't good enough to just work from imagination. So now I have this kind of technique, which is copy and invent. So you just try to elaborate a painting. Sometimes like for people, I use reference pictures and I invent. I just look at them a little bit, or I memorize them. I try to invent without looking at the reference too much, but I need that because it helped me to be more credible. Sometimes I have to, like in this case, where do I take this shape from, for example? It's really hard. So maybe I take a piece of paper and I try to study how, and it's really hard because that's the hardest part, technical part. Yeah. Technically speaking, that's the hardest part, to be credible without being too illustrative or simple. And I think many times I find some solutions that are original. Maybe it's not the best thing, but they are original. So I try to understand, for example, what material should I make this shape, because I see it in my mind, but I don't realize how to do that. So I don't want to be too realistic because it would be like kitschy. So it's just, this is why I like primitives, because primitives were inventing a lot. So they just do whatever they wanted, and it worked because they were really good craftsmen. So that's how I do. It's just copy and inventing, but I cannot do the whole thing from imagination with some levels of realism and plausibility.
And talking about the painting process, like about from the idea until the finished painting, can you describe me a little bit your process? So what I understand is you have this voice, you have this inner dialogue, you get the idea. What happens after? What happens between that and the final painting?
Yeah, there are many different outcomes from the idea. Sometimes I just take the final painting and start directly. Sometimes I need to make a lot of studies because maybe there are 10 figures interacting, and I cannot do that like directly. So I need to understand the proportions, if the painting is big. So I make some sketches and I try to understand how to do that in a real painting. It's not about just putting colors casually. I want to have a kind of feeling. So I need to study on paper. Maybe I do some how sketches, like small sketches, and then I transfer them with kind of a grid on the large painting. But then I tend to not look anymore at the old sketch. So it's just, I try to just go with the flow and see what happens. But I have a structure because I'm not able to do that without a structure. Yeah. Maybe one day I will, but for now I still need to understand what's the anatomy, proportions, how to put figures. Because sometimes when you make a mistake on a large painting, it's really annoying to correct it. So like the basic mistakes, you try to avoid them by doing some studies. Sometimes I start from like an old painting, I cover it, then I remove some parts and I wait for pareidolia to happen to see some shapes, or maybe I do some traces, like some strokes on a painting, and I wait, and sometimes something happens. But that's not, I have many different trajectories, I can follow my instinct, but if I have a certain type of an idea, usually I make some studies before in order to avoid making a mess.
And in your last exhibition, I was shocked about how many paintings you finished between 2025 and 2026. How long does a painting of yours take? Because from what you're describing, it's actually not a super quick process. You need time to elaborate everything you have, and you need time to evolve it as well.
Yeah.
How long would an average painting take you?
It depends, because it depends on the number of figures, of course. If you have 20 figures, you obviously have to paint them. So even if you take one day to just finish one figure, which is crazy, it will be 20 days. But that's the time part is less important. Sometimes even a simple painting can take a lot of time, because maybe I cannot find the right solution, and the voice is not coming, and the idea is not coming, and you just wait because it doesn't feel right. So maybe you can take 6 months to finish a small painting, and maybe 20 days to finish a large one. In the last exhibition, I worked since 2024, so actually it's a lot of time. And many paintings that I started in 2024, I finished them in 2025, and I signed them. So it's like 2 years of work. So this is the reason why there were so many works there. But usually I don't work a lot during the day. I try to be more efficient and deliberate. So just few hours of good intentional painting, and I try to be quick as quick as possible, because I don't want to lose time by doing unnecessary layers. I try to be, I really like fresco painters because they are really direct. I'm not like that. I use some glazings, but usually I try to go straight to the point. So maybe sometimes I use a base color, but if I can, I just paint like a printer. I just try to be quick, and the more I learn to paint, the quicker I become. So I realized old masters were super good, because you look at them up close and it looks easy. It looks easy. And there is an Italian word that is forgotten today, which is one of the best words ever, which is sprezzatura. They use it for clothing now, but it was once used for painting a lot. Sprezzatura means that you are not caring too much. It looks like you're just painting without caring too much, and it looks effortless. And that's the key to when I look at masters, I always look at their sprezzatura, and they are like super efficient, just few strokes, and it works perfectly. You go like 3-4 meters away, and it looks perfect. Then you get close and you see that they are just few strokes.
They're exactly the right stroke, exactly where they should be. Yeah.
That's sprezzatura, and that's a word that is forgotten today. Only for clothing. Used only for clothing. It looks like you went out from your home just wearing like random clothes, but actually they are super studied clothes. But it looks like you're wearing like pajama. But that's that word is. There are some beautiful words from Cristina Campo, the poet, about this, and it inspired me a lot about this concept.
How do you make sure that the hours you dedicate in studio are actually efficient? Is it because you know the times of the day where you work best, or is there something you do to make sure that?
I feel I feel it. I feel that sometimes I want to paint, I really need to paint, and I paint. And that happens almost every day. So if I don't want to paint and I force myself, I will do a mess. So I just don't paint, and that's it. And so my job is to make sure that I'm always wanting to paint. So I try to inspire myself to watch paintings, movies, and to stay in the position of being creative, because otherwise you can easily get digested by the world, because you start to do, for example, I start to do my garden or do other things, and you forget about your inner life, and it's really easy to do that. At least for me, which I am, because I'm not a monk.
Did you ever had any long periods in your life that you went without painting because you weren't feeling it?
Like after an exhibition, sometimes I take a month off, even more, because I feel empty inside. I don't feel anything anymore sometimes. Sometimes after an exhibition is like the most productive time of the year, But sometimes it happens that I don't paint for some months because I just cannot. I just feel empty, and that was not happening at first. But now I feel that every painting should be better, should surpass the other paintings that I made. So I spend a lot of time trying to select out ideas that I don't like, and so I have paralysis sometimes. But I read a book of Odilon Redon that say that like the painter should have something like the painter should have the brush in his hand, and when you have the brush in your hand, things are starting to work again. Because if you just wait for the inspiration without working, months may pass without anything happening. But as long as you prepare your palette and you take the brush in your hand, something is going to happen. And that's my way to yeah, I call them the droughts, like when everything is dry.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need that, because for me, painting and creativity is like agriculture. You have different phases during the year, and you have to respect them, because you cannot have a tree in 1 month. You have to wait, to be patient, and to just wait their times. It's really a beautiful kind of endeavor for me, painting. It connects you with the past, like people were doing this thousands of years ago. They are doing your same job, preparing colors, and you connect yourself with humanity from all ages. But you have to be in touch with your inner spirit. And then another thing is that important is that we need this. Fellini was talking about this. You need an external pressure. For example, if I have an exhibition, if I have a project going on, I am forced out of my comfort zone, because artists that are too free they lack like pressure. If you have some kind of the right one, not too much, it's like car, it's, engine. If you have too much pressure, you're blocked. If you have no pressure at all, you are just like a gas. You just disperse your energy. So you need to have, like, this is why in the past they have like commissioners, people commissioning you, and now we see them as less creative because they have that, but they were actually super creative. So that's the proof that it's not true. If you have a commission maybe or something that you have to do, you just find your strength in that.
Right now you have this external pressure, or are you managing to work in any way?
I have to eat, I have to pay the bills.
That's a good
I
point.
have to make an exhibition. And so, yes, I have a pressure. I cannot stay like an aristocratic guy that can go 3 years. Now I'm going to take 3 years without painting. No, it's not possible. I like painters from all ages had this kind of problem. So I don't feel like I'm the only one. Like if I bought like a book, which is the diaries and the letters mail by Degas, and it was also complaining about money all the time. It was so boring. I thought I was going to find like Delacroix diary, like whole metaphors of life, and he was just complaining about not getting paid. And so I think it's common for an artist to have this kind of pressure. If you are too comfortable, you can lose pressure, and that can be problematic. If you have too much pressure, you're going to ruin everything and sell yourself, and that's so bad. So it's just a little pressure. So the fact that I have some exhibitions to do is enough for me to have like a shape in my life.
And you briefly mentioned cinema or exhibitions, but like, tell me how you inspire yourself. What are your passions beyond painting?
Of course, literature is my number one thing.
What are you reading right now?
I'm reading L'Iguana della Ortese, which is a strange kind of surreal novel. And I'm really into that book right now. And I like many different topics. Usually, I read fiction. I also read a lot of philosophy and any kind of like religious text, any kind of thing that I think it's interesting. So that's movies. I don't watch many movies because I'm really anxious as a person and I get too involved. I have this kind of problem. If I watch a movie, I can be impressed for a few days. It can change my. So sometimes I have to watch them in the morning. I'm really impressionable, so it's really strong. So I don't watch many movies, and then of course artists. I'm a compulsive buyer of art books. I buy a lot of books about art, and I like contemporary and monologues from old masters. I have many of them.
Do you listen to music as well when painting?
Yeah, not always, because it gives. I'm working to just avoid listening to music while doing other things. I'm trying to listen actively to music, which is something that once people used to do, and now it's like crazy. Nobody just gonna listen to this album. Nobody does that anymore. I'm gonna wash my dishes and clean my house and paint and do other things while I listen to music. But that's not how. And I think right now is a good moment for music. There are so many interesting things coming out right now.
What type of music are you talking about?
From pop to like classical. Now we have we have Rosalia, which created a great album with many mystical themes, and she's quoting Simone Weil, and that's so incredible. Ray, like the singer, that she dropped a beautiful album. It's a good moment for music, and even I listen to the Tiny Desk concerts all the time, and I discover so many things from all over the world that are incredible. Like many Italian stuff too. It's a really rich period in music. So, but I try to listen actively without doing anything else, and it's so difficult. I have to force myself because I just want to do other things, because I think I'm too nervous and compulsive. But I need to learn to just listen to music, and it was something that I used to do. Another version of myself. I remember, like, when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
Just I had my stereo just on the bed like this, dreaming, and
That's true.
I have this kind of idea of, and now it's impossible. You don't do that anymore. It's impossible.
Before, one thing you said made me think that, at least for me, art is a continuous research in some sort of way. I don't know if you agree with me on that, and if so, I was wondering what you are researching at the moment with your art.
No, I like this idea of research, but I like to think from a certain, I don't know, from a certain point of view, I like to think that the research has a meaning, as a hand. Because otherwise, why would you be searching for something? I don't like the research in itself. I think the research is just for beauty and divine in your perspective, to catch a reflection of this divine. It can happen sometimes in one or two works in a whole life. So I think that's what we are all researching. Everyone is trying that. But at the same time, I believe that not finding anything is the secret to continue. So, but you have to believe that there is something to search, because the search in itself doesn't mean anything. You want to improve yourself, to create something that gives you that feeling, and you try to get there because you want that. You know that there is an end to the search. If you just research because you just have to innovate, you're not a tech company. You need to go down because you want something. You need something. Or maybe from another perspective, you should stop searching and start, because that's struggling. So I think one of the greatest idea of the past that we have lost today we want to be coherent. But I think the dualism and ambiguity of human being, like the contradictions, are like our essence. So if we just, for example, this idea of searching something, but to search something, you need to not search, maybe, because you need to make emptiness of yourself. That's a contradiction. But I think in the past, they used that kind of thing. And I think that when you start to be coherent, that's the basis of fundamentalism. because you want everything to be coherent. So the other person is just an obstacle to that. When you accept contradictions, you start to incorporate other visions. So I think we need to leave that even in art. We are searching for something, but at the same time, we are searching nothing. And so I think that's the way to go.
Related to this search theme, do you have a dream? What are your next ambitions? What is the dream of your life, let's say, in your career in art?
Yeah, the dream, I think I'm already living this, because my dream would be to, yeah, of course, would be to be more connected to myself. That's the dream, to overcome, for example, phone addiction or any kind of addiction that, I'm not talking about big addictions, even small things that are working against you, and to be more present and to be more, maybe I should do like meditations, but
You don't do it at the moment?
No, I I don't. I tried in the past, but it's not my thing. But yeah, to be more present in daily life. I really like some mindfulness advice, because you need to be present all the time, not only during meditation. Because I feel that it's really a contemporary thing of meditating to be more productive. That thing is not working for me. But to be more present with yourself is something that has to be earned, and that's my real dream. Of course, my dream in real life is to live a simple life and to have my people around, and my family, and that's the real dream. Because when you go through bad things in life, you realize that the other things are just pointless. You have to be close to the people that you love and to live a fulfilling life with creativity. And that's a lot, because it means that there is no war. It means that you have enough food for you and your people. And today, that's not something that is given at all.
Yeah.
So we have so many wars, and we see that people are not living that. Even like we think it's the basis of life, but it's actually a dream life for many people.
Yeah.
So I'm not asking for more, if not being able to live that more deeply, instead of just dreaming about big exhibitions. And it's just, I don't want to say it's vanity, but once you have that, you realize it's nothing. So what's the point of doing all this kind of to waste your life thinking about those things, when you have enough food, we have your people around you, you live in a good place where there are no bombs out. What can you ask more than that? And you don't have health problems maybe, and it's normal, because and if you have them, you have to live with them and to learn to accept them. But once you have those things, I don't think there are many different things to dream. It's just giant museum exhibition, yes, but after that, what you are left with nothing. So that's my idea.
This is an unexpected answer, I would say, but I really like it, because I think we are very used to hear, big dreams and talk about that sometimes, while you as a successful artist giving an answer like this, I think it's very humble in sort of way, and also very, it's very deep as well, because it demonstrates that what is really important in life after all, right?
Yeah, because when you have some troubles in life, you realize what are the important things, because we are all dreaming this kind of money. It's about money, what you have to do with money if you don't have, for example, good health, or all those things are just but it's important to be able to value what you have, and that's, for me, it's taken away by society, by myself, by my capability. But even how society is designed is really, you just have to, like a hamster on the wheel, you're just doing this, but without knowing that. If you just have the capability to appreciate your that you are lucky, but because sometimes we have to say that we have not bombs outside, but we are just a little part of the world. There are other people right now in this moment that are being bombed, and they are not just abstractions. It can be you, and that's something that shaped my. I always think about that. I always think about being in certain situation, and when I try to empathize with those situations, I realize that I would pay to be in the situation I am right now.
Yeah.
So I almost feel unworthy of that because I didn't do anything to earn this. So we better just start being more grounded to reality. Because yes, I can say, oh, I'm frustrated because I wanted to show in that museum, but that's just, not the real thing.
That's very powerful. And I think it really goes back to what you were saying before, being present and actually realizing what you have right now, what you're experiencing right now, and just being grateful about that as well. So
yeah, because in this particular moment, I don't have anything to complain about. But actually, you can always find something to complain about because that's how our society works, to just make you feel that it's not enough, even when it's more than enough. Because I feel that I have a lot and it can be taken away any moment. And that's what life teaches you. And so you just don't talk. So I hope this is not too pretentious, but I think it's true even for anyone.
Absolutely. And now I would want to change topic, and I would love to know a little bit more about your vision on art. So, for example, when you go to exhibitions, what makes you say wow in front of art? What makes you think, yes, this is great art? So, are there any elements that you really appreciate in art, or are you obsessed about something in particular?
I think it's not possible to define that. I think it's that kind of speck of the divine that you see, that you feel that something is really working and you don't know why. So it's when you perceive that, you realize that's it. So I don't think, I'm not linked to any particular genre or kind of, it can be any kind of thing. If I feel that there is a world behind that, maybe that's the thing. I feel that there is a world behind that. I feel that there is a lot going on, and you're just seeing a little part of a universe that the artist is revealing to us, and that's almost transcendent feeling of there is something other, and it makes you bigger, and it doesn't make you jealous. Like if you feel, no, I wanted to do that, that's not good.
Yeah.
Because it means that it's not enriching you, it's competing with you. That's not good. But you have to feel like, I want to go home and start working. That's the idea.
It's inspiring you.
It's inspiring, and yes, and sometimes it happens. And great works of art are like that, but not always, but sometimes they do that. Sometimes you realize it's a great work of art, even if you don't like it from a historical perspective, but you don't take anything from that. But there are some certain works that, for example, I saw the Monforte altarpiece in Berlin by van der Goes, the Flemish painter. I never saw something painting so beautiful in my life. It was, but it's not like the technique in itself. It was so pouring from his art. It was just pure devotion, and the faces, the robes and the plants, they were painted with a kind of pouring love from the art, and it looks like glowing, and it was so beautiful, and I had no words for that. But it's not that common to appreciate that work so much, but I would put it like in the first room at the center of an entire museum because it was so beautiful. And many people are not feeling that for the same painting. So I think it depends on you. But I realized that I discovered that artist went mad after a while. It was crazy. It was had like mental issues, and he had like a breakdown after a while. So it was, for me, it was so close to the otherness that it didn't manage to keep that. And is painting in the Uffizi Gallery, the Trittico Portinari. When it came to Italy, like Italian painters were like shocked, and it changed Italian painting forever. And it's overlooked as a painter, but it's one of the greatest of all time. Maybe it's political, maybe it's because it wasn't from Italy, but people are kind of overlooking him. But I think that painting is incredibly beautiful. And the one in Berlin is out of this world. This was pure perfection, and every detail was created with total intention. It looks like pure attention. It was a manifestation of something, and you realize that is just a wooden board with some pigments on it, but it was something divine for me.
I love how you're describing this. You can really see your passion for that painting specifically. And regarding the contemporary art world and the art scene, what are your opinion about this?
I think there are a lot of energies that are dispersed in a way because I don't know what people are searching in art right now. I think everyone is going in its own direction, and that's good. But at the same time, many painters, I don't understand what they are doing, why they are doing that. And I see many energies, and I think we are in a kind of a primitive movement. I think right now, with a lot of figuration that is coming back in style, we have many different styles, and they try to say different things. I don't know where many painters want to go, actually, but it's a moment of openness because we don't have a code to follow. So it's just everyone is doing whatever they want, but I don't see that there is a clear direction. Everyone is just trying to say his own things, and maybe I am part of this as well, but maybe it's like a historical period where we are taking figuration back. Some people are referring to the first years of the 20th century. Some people are referring to the late 19th century. Everyone is doing their thing, and they don't know what to do with the figuration right now. And I think it's interesting. There are some interesting effects on that, but at the same time, I see a lot of dispersion in places where I don't understand. But maybe it's just because I'm ignorant, but I see a lot of different perspectives. But I think politically it's good because political art need to be dangerous, and figurative art is dangerous because it tells a story. And when you tell a story, you can tell a story that you don't like. So I think that the fact that the figuration is coming back, it's interesting also from a political perspective, not because it needs to be a propaganda poster or something like that, but because they say things, maybe they're representing like people that are not represented in the past. And that's great because you can do a political act just by representing your own image. And they say that it's political art, even if you just represent yourself. Yeah. And so that's something that has never been done in painting before. You can, like, for example, black people, you cannot represent, if you paint a black person, you're doing this right now because you can do that. Because in the past, yes, someone did that, but it was just something really rare. Usually they try to represent the same thing. But now you can do so many things with painting, and people are discovering this. And I think it can be even dangerous for some, because you have all this power. So this is what I think about contemporary art. There are many energies that can be used for interesting things.
So that's your hope for the future of the art world, to focus better the energy?
And for me, it's to be a little bit more vertical, to try to... I think many painters are scared of being kitsch right now, because, or cringe now, it's the new word is cringe. So they are holding back, and they're not pouring themselves completely into the work. And I think maybe I can be part of this as well. And if we start to embrace our true identity, and mainly to be more vertical, in the sense that we need to search for beauty and for meaningful images that are not just the fashion thing, the trendy thing that is going on at the moment, and you try to imitate that, but you try to go deeper. And you can do that in so many different ways, like other art forms are doing. There are some art forms that are doing that. Even in literature, you need to write a novel that is powerful. In art, I see that many people are trying to be trendy, but the problem maybe is because you have to sell your painting to a certain kind of people, so they just want innocuous paintings. But I think as artists, I want to see in the future more people taking seriously painting and trying to create. A good hope about that.
And with that, I think we come to the last question of the interview, one that I like to ask. So if you had to give an advice to young artists, what would that be?
I don't know, to be true to yourself. That's, super it's true, but even it's something that you hear many times, but I don't think it's possible for me to give any advice, because it's just I'm a young artist. So,
But already so successful.
no, not so successful. And yes, I feel that I still am a student, so I'm learning through my painting how to do that. So maybe after 40, I will start giving advices. But the base advice is just be true to yourself, and that's not so easy to do, because it's easy to just sell yourself to the current trend, and to not listen too much to people that are not painting, that are telling you what to do, because they do that a lot, and sometimes they can be right, but just sometimes they just want power, because they want to use their power, like in I don't know, curators, they use their power to determine what art is good, what art is not good. Sometimes they are right and they need to be listened. Sometimes they are just gatekeeping. So that's something dangerous to avoid. Even in academies, sometimes I feel this. You have to be true to yourself, and to listen to good advice, not bad advices.
Well, how do you distinguish good advice from bad advice then, especially for a young artist who's exposed to so many things and is trying to orientate himself or herself around the world?
The good advice is when they understand the logic of the work and they try to work according to that logic. If they are trying to impose their own view on you, which is maybe you don't agree with that, they say, like, for example, you have to be more politically involved, but maybe your nature is to be involved in a different way. That's you force something inside the painting. But if they understand what's the nature of your painting, and they say, okay, but this color doesn't work, or this character needs to be smaller because it's taking too much space. I understand what's the logic of the painting, and I try to give an advice about that in your language, not that I try to impose my language. That's the toxic kind of advising, when you try to impose your vision, and they do that a lot. Sometimes people do that.
Thank you so much, Alessandro. It was super inspiring. I really appreciate the time you dedicated to me today. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.